Hey, my friends, I hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to talk about Petri Flask, what it is, exactly how it works and how to use it, and most importantly, should it still be allowed in WoW Hardcore? So let's start off with what it is. Flask of Petrification is created by alchemists using stone scale oils, 10 mountain silver sages, and a black lotus. And on current hardcore servers, it's pretty expensive. It's around 30 to 40 gold each. When used, it's an instant combat drop, it's a threat reset, and it makes you immune from just about all damage in the game, physical or spell damage, for 1 full minute. And during that time, you can't do anything. You can't move or cast or anything. You're in effect turned to stone. So in hardcore, you can use this to save yourself both in open world fighting and in dungeons. So starting off with what I'll call like the intended usage in the open world, if you're fighting and you have, say, too many mobs on you and you're gonna die, you can just Petri and the mobs will instantly reset. Your threat goes to zero and you become immune to any damage. And any debuff that you had ticking on you is gone and you're safe. Now, it's important to understand that if you're, say, far from the mob's original location, they will run back there and you'll be out of combat and you're good. But if you're within aggro radius of their location, they will drop from you, but will re-aggro onto you, or put another way, you can still proximity aggro or like body pull while you're petrified. So let's say, for example, that you've looted a Blood of Heroes in EPL, you spawned this horrible Fallen Heroes guy, you run and you got dazed as they do or slowed, you don't have a FAP like you should, and you can't get away, and finally you Petri. They will run back to where they originally aggroed onto you. You can click off the petrification and you're safe. But if you petried straight away, say right near the spawn point here, like this, they're going to drop quickly. Then after a moment, re-aggro onto you and it'll be hitting you again. And you're immune, of course, but when your minute is up, you'll be taking damage again. So in this case, you get into like a chaining Petri situation where you want to get away from the spawn point. You unpetri, you move a bit, hopefully far enough from the mob's original point, then you repetri, and if they run away, you're safe. So this works exactly like this in dungeons too. You can Petri and drop threat, and as long as you're not near the mobs, it's like a full reset for the player. Now, usually in a dungeon, there's others in the group and you'll still have aggro. So it's not like a full encounter reset, but it can be used to tactically get you out of trouble and maybe wait for a heal or just drop threat if you pulled. And by the way, here's the most extreme example of this. This was a #1 in the world mage molten core performance during a speed run, and he would pump damage till he pulled threat, quickly Petri it off, then reflask his Supreme Power Flask, because incidentally, you can only have one flask active at a time. So using a 1 minute Petri clears a 2 hour flask of Supreme Power or Titans or others. So for Len here, this was a quick, call it 90 gold flask exchange. And by the way, Len posted this entire POV of this entire run, and it was an awesome performance by everyone in the group, and I'll link it in the description. You should definitely watch it. So anyway, I don't think that the critics of Petring, or those of you that think it should be removed from hardcore WoW, have too much of a problem with what I just described, this type of use, right? It's sort of like fair play. It's all in-game cool stuff, but here's where we get into the gray area for sure. What if you're in the same spot? I'll use the same example. You looted the Blood of Heroes. You don't think this time that you can chain and get away, or you're very low health inside of your Petri. Can you just leave the game? Petri Alt F4. Well, the answer is yes, you can. So what exactly happens when you Alt F4? Well, it instantly closes your WoW client on your PC, but from the game's perspective, you're still online on the Blizzard server while it waits for, hoping to hear back from your client that maybe is having temporary internet issues, that you get reestablished and you're back. But what really happens is that the second the connection is lost, a 50-second timer starts on the Blizzard server, after which the character will be logged off and removed from that Blizzard server. And you can actually test this, and I have with a side-by-side client, which I have here, 2 WoW Classic Era clients logged in. And as you can see, if I Alt F4, Jeff C on the right, then instantly start the timer, after 50 seconds, the character finally logs off. And I've checked this many, many times to confirm. I've even validated that it works when you're in combat. When you log off in combat, you'll still be logged out 50 seconds after, so long as you don't die first, which of course you won't if you're sitting in a 60-second Petri. So you'd live, but then when you logged back in, you'd still be in that same spot and potentially in trouble depending on where the mobs are. So to get yourself to a safe spot, you'd use Blizzard's Unstuck feature on their website, which will move your character to the nearest graveyard or Hearthstone spot, and you'll be safe. And the reason I know this works is that this happened to me in my very first time I had to Petri on my current HC character, Jeffo. And I did something incredibly stupid. Like rule number one of hardcore, you all know what it is. Everyone's number one tip, always don't go into caves. So of course I went into a cave, and it's one of the very worst caves in the game. Here between Western and Eastern Plaguelands is the Terror Web Tunnel. And I was clearing through here. I got into trouble, multiple mobs on me. I'd used everything, every pot on cooldown. I couldn't use my Light of Elune because of that. Last ditch effort, I hit Petri and Alt F4, and then I did the unstuck thing on Blizzard's website. I waited till I got confirmation on the site. I logged back in, and I was at the Stratholme entrance. And this is the actual screenshot I took the second that I logged back online. And the interesting thing you can see is that I was still petried. I had 1 second left on my Petri Flask. And of course, my health was very low. And incidentally, I almost got killed right after this screenshot by the Scarlet Pack that spawns right here and then patrols down the road in EPL. So it was a scary day. So anyway, Petri Alt F4 does work, but it's like a bit messy, right? You're logged out. You need to be careful how and when you log back in. You have to decide if you're going to do the unstuck or not. And then you're not with your group anymore and all of that, which is why most dungeon groups will use the Petri out meta, which is for sure the most controversial piece of this. It's primarily the reason why people are against Petri. They say it should be removed from hardcore. And that's where we combine the Ghetto Hearth, the anti-griefing leave dungeon mechanic, with the Petri mechanic. So if you're inside a dungeon or a raid and you leave group, a few seconds later, a 1-minute timer starts, at the end of which you're teleported to your Hearthstone location. And of course, that was implemented so that if you have, a player kicked from the group, they can't stay in the dungeon, forever preventing you from inviting new people or otherwise griefing the group. So that's what raiders will do if they get into trouble in a raid. They'll leave group, wait for that message to pop up, and then use a Petri Flask, and you'll be automatically hearthed out of the instance before your Petri is up. Where it can get dicey is if you have to use the Petri straight away to save your life. Maybe you're the tank, then you decide to leave the group after. You might be in a situation where you have to re-Petri a second time to make it to the teleport timer. So in that case, we would use a Petri macro like this, which is a spammable macro that will instantly cancel the active petrification and re-Petri quickly. And because Petri triggers the global cooldown, you can spam this, say 5 times quickly, and it will quickly unpetri and re-Petri you, but not re-cancel the effect immediately. So like my process is, I have this macro ready. And by the way, this is an amazing macro created by the player Esuvii, which immediately leaves group and will even trigger the leave group effect if you're not in a group or you happen to be the last person left on the group if everyone else left, so that the Ghetto Hearth timer would pop up. So what I just described, both Petri Alt F4 and Petri Ghetto Hearth to save your life in hardcore, is what I think people believe is sort of like cheating the hardcore or like counter to the spirit of the game mode. And if you think this and you have this opinion, you're not wrong. You're not wrong at all, right? I mean, this is a use of mechanics in the game that was never intended this way. And we're using it to save ourselves when we would have otherwise died, for sure. And here is why I believe that Petri was left in the game and none of these mechanics were changed, and why I believe it probably should remain so. 3 reasons, and it's just my opinion. But number one, my own opinion of the way I want to play hardcore is I'd like to play the original WoW as close as possible to the classic vanilla, but without the ability to resurrect a dead character. And that's it. And that's why I don't play with the old hardcore add-on or in the game's SF mode, limiting trades and auction house and grouping. I just want to keep the game the same as classic with all the original tools and abilities to save our character. But if you do die, you're done. And you might say, well, then why did they remove like the Bubble Hearth from Paladins? Well, that's because they thought it was too OP for a single class as opposed to Petri's, which any class can use. But frankly, my response is I don't think they should have removed that. I think it should have remained in and been left alone alongside Petri. All right, reason 2 is that I'm guessing most people that suggest Petri should be removed from the game have not truly played the game or reached level 60 in hardcore, or certainly done 60 dungeons or raids. I think there's this misconception that Petri like completely trivializes the hardcore raids or dungeons or completely negates the ability to die in dungeons. And nothing could be farther from the truth. A Petri Flask is an extremely expensive item. It takes a lot of planning and understanding to use it. I have 2 dead 60s on hardcore, and I've seen many of my fellow guild members die at 60, and you've all seen the death clips of people dying at 60 in dungeons and in raids, and all of them, including my 2, had multiple Petri Flasks in our bags when they died. So a Petri Flask is far from like a Minecraft totem where it's an easy get out of jail card. It's a technical game element that you have to use to save your character's life, and it involves a certain amount of planning and skill and resources to do so. And my third sort of sketchy reason is that we need some way, in my opinion, to counter the fact that Blizzard continues to make unannounced odd changes to the game mode, which should, in my opinion, stay completely unchanged. It's the WoW classic experience from 20 years ago. I mean, just in recent weeks, the last boss in AQ40 was changed so that if a player is not in range, they're instantly teleported up to his platform in one shot. And it never used to be like that before. And then, frankly, he was changed again after that. They recently added level 58 or 59 mobs to areas of Desolus, which is a 30 to 35 area where they never existed before. The vulnerabilities of certain raid bosses were changed recently, and none of these things are done like they used to be, where there would be patch notes to the community and this kind of thing would be announced. It's all done with complete radio silence from Blizzard. And so, I have sort of this cynical attitude of while Blizzard keeps making these thoughtless random changes to the hardcore game mode that shouldn't change at all, we need Petri to keep ourselves alive. So anyway, that's sort of just commentary. But the last thing I'll say about it is whether or not you think it's 100% fair. If we did not have the Petri mechanic, I don't know that we'd have much of any endgame scene in hardcore at all. I think there'd be very little, if any, raiding. And, if you disagree with me here, but you haven't played much on hardcore, or you've only truly tried it for a while and died early, like now's the time to start to come back. And I'll tell you, Defias Pillager is getting busier every day. It's got an awesome community, griefers aside, if you saw that video. And I really think it's the closest you get to, how the game felt the first time through in 2004 and 5 and 6. So, get yourself into the game, get to 60, run some dungeons and some raids. And I'll tell you, your opinion on Petris might change once you've done that like mine did. So if you truly have reached 60 on hardcore and are running dungeons and especially raids, and you still don't think Petris should be allowed and you believe they should be removed from the game, I'll tell you, like you're a real Chad and you're far more hardcore than I am. So anyway, what's your opinion on Petris? Let me know in the comments, please. And especially if you disagree, I'd love to hear from you. Folks, I hope this was interesting or maybe you learned something. And if so, if you want to click the like or sub button, I appreciate it very much. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.